Welcome back to Analyze. We've been talking about cognitive science, thinking, reason, learning, and it is in fact how it is that we learn. We talked about hypothesis testing and that we learn through that process. Even young children. In fact, when you take young children and you tell them not to do something, they're the first ones to do it. They're building up in their mind sort of a database of things, and they only know those things to be true through the process of testing those things. How does that tie, Osama? You mentioned knowledge is based on evidence, and you mentioned in the Quran's injunction that do not follow that about which you have no knowledge. A very strong verse that says that you must base your life in a very moral sense as well as in a cognitive sense, rational sense, every sense, on certain knowledge, on certainty, on certitude. How does certitude relate to the notion of Iman?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think that is in my view, that is a question that is worth a lot, and the answer that perhaps provides quite an interesting light on the whole issue of knowledge. Because, as we know, that humanity was distinguished by the fact that in our beginning we were taught language. Taught not in the sense of somebody standing up, in front of you in a blackboard or something. Taught in the sense of somebody who created you that way, the facilitation of the emergence of language, whether it's a vocal tract, whether it is something to do with your brain and mind, in the creation of humanity. So language distinguishes us, and actually without language there is no knowledge, because language as symbol representing reality, and then these the names as the Quran brings them, or the concepts, then this play of concept create knowledge. Mm-hmm. And of course it creates knowledge through this idea perhaps of testing, experimenting, and observing. Now, and that is, I think, plays into the vacuum that we have in these modern times, perhaps felt more than others, that things doesn't seem to lead anywhere. If you look at outside the realm of the Quran, the idea of knowledge that we have, which is really so much that perhaps if you put the kind of books and production that are made, perhaps it may be put around the earth maybe hundreds of times. But yet we still have this vacuous feeling, as to sometimes people fall into as if people have to have some kind of blind belief into certain things. The idea of reasoning that leads you somewhere becomes almost a blocked way. That's why people are getting into mysticism and all kind of other forms of irrationality. It is really very strange when you look at from the Quranic point of view, when you realize that what you are doing in seeking knowledge, whether you realize that or not, perhaps you cannot make the right connections because you have already given up, as indeed there is a meaning and there is an object and there is a purpose behind that knowledge, is that this actually knowledge is related to the idea of belief. Belief and knowledge, because belief is actually supposed to be, by definition, even by definition of the philosophers who are working on this, in these areas of thinking rather long, is that knowledge is defined as justified belief. So the belief that is justified, that is knowledge. Remember that if the Quran says, don't follow that upon which you have no knowledge, that means actually, don't follow that which you do not have a justified belief. And the Quran gives you the tools. Justified belief. Did you see it? Faculty of vision. Did you hear about it? But hearing about it, as you know, and the Quran of course expand, and we have the example of the Prophet expand on these things, that you are not supposed to relate knowledge. It says that, for example, it is enough for the person to be a liar if you pass on knowledge without verification. If I heard something and I passed it, I'm also a liar. If that is not true, and if that's not correct, and I pass it on, like the media does all this. So every media reporter, and I think, beware that you are not just kind of conveying it, but you are part of that. You are also a liar. You are also not telling the truth of the matter when you are passing on information that are not accurate and not correct.
So that's a good reminder for us here on the program. Now, so there is a moral connection between confirmation of knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. There is also a moral connection between knowledge and, let's say, conjecture, or rather the lack of, that one must not follow conjecture, right?
Yes.
Avoid much conjecture, for in conjecture there is some sin, or there is much sin. أجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم.
Yes.
So the Quran is very strong about the idea of being anti-superstition, being anti-ignorance, being pro evidence, pro knowledge, building knowledge up methodologically from the ground up the proper way, and inculcating this in us. What about the idea of belief? Now, we hear about. I think it goes without saying that everybody has heard this. That people say that there is this notion of religious belief, which is about really taking a blind faith leap into blind faith, versus every other kind of belief, which is sort of our everyday notion of belief or the scientific notion of belief. But the Quran, there is no such dichotomy in the Quran.
Yeah, there is no such notion. These are foreign implantation, if you want, or into the so-called deviation, which actually, interestingly, the Quran tells us about this deviation.
So, what is the Quranic definition of belief? Coming to the precise words within the Quran. What is the meaning of that word? What is the meaning of iman? And what is the correct process of belief?
Yeah, actually, when you look at those meanings, and as we touched upon the idea of reason, rationality, all through the Quran, if you look at that, you will find that actually the meaning of the word iman, for example, and Islam, both of them, relate to these notions very strongly at a very profound foundational ground. Because the word iman, it comes from a root which is really, ammana, iman. So if you have a dictionary, like this one perhaps here, that's Lisanul Arab. That is an Arabic dictionary of few centuries ago. It is an excellent Arabic dictionary. You will find that the meaning of amn, iman, amana is related to the notion of safety, security. Like if you close your door properly, you say ammin, ammin, that means secure it properly. Also, the word iman, as you can see it here, it means that it is tasdeeq, if you can see it in this dictionary, which means basically confirmation and verification, interestingly. And of course, Islam also relates to this. Islam, it is a submission, but submission and surrender to what? When you put it like, sometime, of course, I think people, particularly who are having some kind of a discomfort with Islam due to a lot of misrepresentation, they use the word Islam and usually they connect it outside the proper context and meaning, as if it looked like you are surrendering and submitting to something. So, it is something unworthy of person to submit and surrender. But so its submission here is submission to truth, submission to knowledge, submission to understanding, and therefore you submit. And therefore you submit to that which is true, you submit to that which is worthy submitting to, and also here is the working out of the responsibilities. Because you cannot really submit to that which is right, that which is true, unless your faculties of hearing and faculties of vision and faculties of understanding will work on to get you to that which is true,
Yes.
and that which is profound, and that which is, so there is a responsibility of you getting there.
And it's not an external truth, it needs to become an internal truth. It needs to become something that one has verified and ascertained for
It has to
themselves.
be yours. It has to be your effort.
You own it. You
Yeah.
own it.
Otherwise, where are you? And as an individual, that's why the Quran emphasizes that every one of you is coming eventually to meet their Lord, to meet their Creator, as what? Farda. That means farda, it means you are coming as an individual. You are not going to come with your armies or protective. Allah will make it that you will come alone in total isolation. Personally, you look around you, there is nothing but you. And actually, interestingly, your body will participate in that. Because your body also has memories, the hands, what you have done, the legs, where did it lead you, the eyes, what you have, all these things. So your body is going to also be part of you, and perhaps will be reminding you in a way that's beyond our imagination right now, of what you have done.
Indeed. So iman is the word for belief that is used in the Quran, or one of the words. Iman is about security, about confirmation, and therefore about really, it is both a process and an outcome. You have the outcome of security if you have the process of confirmation.
Exactly.
Yes. Fascinating. Yes. When we come back, we'll talk more about Iman, the notion of belief in the Quran, right after these messages. Don't go away.